stopped, they said, but they were lying. The attack continued for another hour and 20 minutes, during which 25 more American sailors died and 110 more were wounded. All would have been spared if the American planes sent to help them had not been recalled by Washington.
The point was, the attack did take place. There were a lot of reasons that the Israelis would have wanted to hide things from the U.S., and that's why there is a need for an investigation. I mean, you're not going to take the word of somebody who was the principal person who caused it. That'd be like taking the word of a defendant in a shooting.
Every one of the 1,000-odd clashes between Syria and Israel between 1948 and 1967 was examined by the UN Truth Supervisory Commission, which found out that only a very, very few had been caused by the Syrians. A few dozen of the clashes were ambiguous, and all of the rest were caused by Israel. Well, there were many officers of many nations, and they all reported the same thing. Could they all have been lying? Still, we no longer have to rely only on the UN documentation. Moshe Dayan, who commanded the Israeli forces in 1967 and had given the order to occupy the Golan, gave an interview to an Israeli journalist in 1976. The interview was kept secret until April 1997, when it was published in an Israeli newspaper. It's been authenticated by Israeli historians, and General Dayan's daughter, Yael, a member of the Knesset, insisted that it be published. Why did he give the order? To invade. Essentially, it was because of pressure from the would-be settlers in the Golan, who convinced Levi Eshkol, the Israeli prime minister, to occupy the heights and the fertile lands beyond. And when asked if that were all there was to it, Dayan replied, "I can tell you with absolute confidence that they were not thinking about security. They were thinking about the heights land. I saw them. I spoke with them. They didn't even try to hide their greed for that land."
The best one is the one where they wanted to go on Heights. And Johnson said, that's enough, and they needed another day to get the Golan Heights, which they still have, which I didn't think you were supposed to do, take land from another country and keep it.
If we could get the truth of the liberty out, that it would change history, I think, in this country.
I cannot, absolutely can't see why our American newspapers and TV people have helped to cover this up, but not covering some of our stories.
The Navy Board of Inquiry would not admit testimony about the jamming, the recall, the unmarked planes, the shooting of life rafts, and other material that we tried to present. They asked questions. We were allowed to answer those questions, period.
They put me into a ward with 12 to 13 other patients, and within 30 minutes they removed me from that ward and put me into a single room. I noticed that I had a name tag with Smith on, and right after I noticed that, an officer came in and told me that from now on my name is Smith, I was never on the Liberty, and I was never ever to talk about it to anyone. I still have 53 pieces of shrapnel in me today.
Never before has the U.S. Navy ignored eyewitness testimony of American military to accept on faith the story told by their attackers.
Certain entries in the ship's log of June 8th have raised serious questions.
Nobody knew who was wounded or how severely.
This had not been established until days after reaching Malta. The log also minimized the duration of the attack by over an hour and a half, conveniently fitting the Israeli version. It then documented the number of wounded not as the actual 172, but at the widely published media figure of 75.
It should be a congressional committee, both Senate and House, to examine all the data available. And it's getting late to do this because, like McGonigal, God bless his soul, is gone.
I know that Bill was on board the USS Liberty, and the ship was off the coast at Gaza Strip, as I recall, and yet our government put it in writing in the United States Senate book of Congressional Medal of Honor recipients that he received his medal for action in Vietnam. Now, to me, that is one of the worst cover-ups in American history. How low can our government go?
And it's something that I'd like to see totally investigated and a closure of this issue, because I think President Johnson was the villain on it. I think he recalled the people that were to defend this ship.
I have never accepted the Israeli explanation, and so far as I am concerned, the affair of the USS Liberty remains a scar on the relations between Israel and the United States.
Things like this don't happen. Things are caused to happen. There must be some reason why more is not known. There must be some reason why we didn't react more deliberately, more directly, more positively, as we have reacted many times in our history before and since.
As a Marine, I'm proud to say that 3 members of the Liberty crew were Marines. 2 of them died that day, but Bryce Lockwood was decorated for saving sailors' lives. And Bill McGonigal, the skipper of the Liberty, was awarded the Medal of Honor for action above and beyond the call of duty. And I firmly believe, after review of the documentation of this film, that an in-depth, honest investigation, inquiry into what really happened that day is owed to the members of the crew, their family, and all Americans.
We need to take some very serious efforts to bring out the full story. And on that basis, I would certainly recommend that we pursue this with diligence. We go to the Congress and urge them to conduct a formal, complete investigation to get the full story about the loss of our great ship, the Liberty.
In the case of the Liberty, this is the first time, to my knowledge, where a United States warship has been attacked without warning, and no action whatever was taken to investigate this situation on the part of the Congress. I have urged this over and over again, and I still think that the attack on the Liberty warrants a full-fledged investigation by the Congress of the United States.
Those murdered that day must not have died in vain. The plea for justice by the Navy's most decorated crew should forever haunt us. Americans must never forget this second day of infamy and our own unbalanced foreign policy in the